Did you know that pornography shrinks the brain? Did you also know that it is proven that it is an addiction on the level of crack cocaine? Hi, I'm Chris, the principal, and this is another special episode of The Principal Show, where I try to divvy out the details on yet more cover-ups galore. We have a serious problem with truth, and I'm here to try to uncover truth and point you towards people that are uncovering truth. So like I said in the last episode, at least 68% of men regularly watch pornography. Other studies say it's probably at 80 to 90%. So there are varying studies there. And 65% don't think it's a problem. Pornography has actual effects on the brain. Any sort of sexual stimulation involves a lot of components. And what they're learning is if it's a virtual sexual situation that isn't real and it doesn't have emotional context that is something that is binding. You know, sex does not work exactly like a drug addiction. It has some specific differences, and I'll get into that. But anything that's virtual becomes very addictive because it confuses the brain. The brain is confused. It can't really differentiate that well. And so because you only hit some of the parts of the brain when you watch pornography and masturbation and all of that. And I would also add hookup culture and fornication does this as well. Because you only get some of it, you want more and you want more and you want more. And what they're finding out is that the brain only wants the physical side of sex. And the physical side of sex, you have the looks, you have this particular situation that gives you a sense of reward, you have particular circuits that aim for a greater and greater rush. And so, not only is it addictive, not only does it darken your brain, the frontal lobe is where this happens, but it also leads to greater and greater, more extreme fantasies. This is a very common thing. Pornography websites have blown the whistle on this. They release the information. And so you have people that get into deeper and darker fantasies and fetishes. This is a whole Pandora's box that is open because of this fake connection. You have certain chemicals being affected here. And the first one is dopamine. Okay, dopamine is an all-encompassing chemical that is responsible for eating, sleep, sex, and other reward components in life. So one of the effects is depression, a depression cycle. So what many users are now reporting is that their depression is increasing, and many of them believe it has to do with pornography. Everything becomes dull in normal life, and then the brain suddenly lights up when it sees something sexually explicit. It's like the only thing that really seems to matter is a sexual rush. And this is a very complicated issue on how it affects people. Drugs affect people depending on their dispositions and their morality. So some people just go woohoo and just lose themselves in depravity. But that is not the majority of cases from what it seems. And this is where we have to be careful. There was a feminist push, and still is, to make men ashamed of their sexual power because it's toxic. And they only like to look at the fact that, well, men are dogs and porn is bad because it makes men dominant and want to abuse women. But that is not really the full picture. The full picture is actually most men just become depressed. They have some sense of morality. They know they can't go out and use, women like that. But at the same time, they have this this bulldog in their heads which is their corrupted brains and their confused subconscious, pushing them to still want to live out the fantasy of being a masculine dominant man. Okay? So we're not being completely honest here. And they are suffering. Okay? Many of these men coming out are suffering. They mention it. They are not happy with the fact that they're hooked here. And many of you may be suffering. Okay? So this indeed is a problem that affects the user, and it hinders them. Also, you have testosterone. Now, this is harder to really pinpoint because there are not that many studies that connect porn with anxiety problems and confidence problems, but there are many anecdotal problems being cited. And so you have the depression cycle where people are depressed, becoming more depressed, and some of them are already depressed from the broken down society we have. So there's a very vicious cycle going on there. But then you have young men who are not very confident amongst women, and they usually have a lot of heartache, and they tried. They turn to porn, but then they realize that the porn makes them less confident and more anxious because a fake sexual situation is releasing testosterone as well. And so this conflict with the conscious and subconscious still happens. You know, the subconscious thinks they're having sex, but the conscious knows that it's not real. So there's another depression that happens. I know that I'm not really with a real girl. I'm not able to have any sort of real contact. So I'm hooked to something that I know isn't real. And that causes a severe just dissonance. It causes such a conflict. And so that devalues the man, makes them feel depressed, makes them feel anxious, and also weakens them. Men are reporting that they feel beholden to women because they're so fixated on sex being the only thing that can really make them feel anything. Through the pornography, they feel compelled to kind of be afraid of women. They're afraid of getting close to them, interacting with them. The feminism definitely doesn't help. The man-hate propaganda doesn't help. And it's like, well, I guess all I have is my porn. So they shy away from getting involved, not only with women, but also in society. They are not formed to understand, and I don't think many people at all are formed to understand that libido is not just about sex. It's about the man's energy. Sex can release the man's libido in a very powerful way. But in the wrong context, it scatters the man's libido. It confuses the brain. So it's very much like almost like a limited energy mechanism. You know, some of you, maybe you know physics or you know science, and you know about how energy is limited and it can be divided. Well, something neurologically and psychologically, and I would say from my perspective, spiritually is happening here, right? We have limited resources as a man. Every man has a certain amount of energy or power level, right? Nerds here understand my power level reference. So you're constantly giving away your power into something fake. And so now it's dispersed, and that's why you have a crappy Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Right? Now you feel like junk, but there's a reason for that. It isn't just because society sucks. You're making it worse by having a fake virtual sex life. And it confuses your brain. And so something scientific is happening here. I think this is where we need to be very careful. And we need to admit pornography is a problem. And yes, we need to spread the word. We need to work on it. And it will help us. But we're dealing with an all-encompassing life problem. We're dealing not just with pornography, but the cornering of men, the muzzling of men to be consumers, to be kind of like I said, Homer Simpson or some, you know, man who is weak and beholden to pleasure. And it's not just in porn, but it's everywhere. So a lot of men are reporting that, you know, things, you can't just tackle this just by saying, no, it is an addiction, but you need to replace it with, whether it be with prayer, exercise, and especially finding a passion and a meaning in life. It isn't enough to just, let's say, oh, I don't know. I mean, you know, you had these first wave nofap guys. That's a community which try to stop the masturbation. And they're like, well, I got to get me a girl, man. But the problem is the girl of their dreams never came. We have a problem in the dating world. Or you have this terrible movie here called Don John. It had good points. I just hated the execution. I'll save you the details, right? A lot of them turned to Don Johns, you know, out of the frying pan into the fire. So a lot of them just became hookup culture guys, and they became depressed again, and then they fell into pornography again. And in the movie Don John, it shows that a lot of these guys in hookup culture are hooked on porn too and pretty depressed in themselves. So this whole player boy thing, first of all, it isn't really that prevalent as much as the feminist propaganda would say. Most men are actually alone and single and stuck on pornography. They're not out there chasing skirts. But those that are chasing skirts and in the hookup culture, they're not really that happy either. And there's tons of anecdotes there. So the hookup culture is being blown out of the water as well. But you can have some guys who, yes, they get hooked into pornography. They become perverted. They act out on other people. They drag other people into their problems, you know. 2/3 of the divorces where it was the man's fault usually was connected to pornography. The pornography inspired them to have an affair. So, of course, that can be a problem. Perversions, you know, you have sex abusers and rapists and really bad serial killers. And all these people do eventually admit that pornography inspired their issue. So don't get me wrong, pornography for some men can make them into criminals. But, you know, is it really a win to go from pornography to a hookup culture? And I would say this, is it really a win to go from pornography into putting it into, let's say, a woman who can manipulate that power again, right? The whole, I would say, the crux of the issue, the core of the issue is, one, morality. One, you know, you are degrading what sex is from something beautiful to something that's just recreational, to something that is considered the height, the pinnacle of, you know, getting close to God for some people, right? Marriage is a sacrament for the Catholics. The pinnacle of what drives men to do great things, you know, is often romance. As well as if you're not, you know, if you're meant to be more of a hermit celibate, well, that power should be to reach for the stars, reach for God, you know, inspire you to make a great painting or to fight for a good cause because you're thinking of the good and the beautiful. It degrades it into just you know, just another cocaine rush, right? So of course there's that. Of course there's spiritual ramifications where it cuts us off from that divine beauty who is God, right? And we lose sight of the ultimate. But the second problem just simply is that there is just this problem where men give away their power and they become weak and anything for my fix. And because they become weak, that can be taken advantage of. It can be yoinked, they can be yoinked around by anyone who's manipulating them. I see it all the time. And so don't become like Don John over here. The ending was questionable, right? He does fix his problems. He's a Catholic, by the way. But then, like, that chick he ended up with, I don't know, man. I don't know, bro. I wouldn't just say in the looks department, but I mean, I listened to her, and it's like, it seems to be an out of the frying pan situation. And doesn't he fornicate with her? And that's, you know, another sin. So I don't know, bro. I don't know, man. Mr. Don John, it doesn't seem like you made that much progress ultimately. So I really don't buy this thing of, well, we just need to just find ourselves a real girl. It's not that simple. And I'm not bashing that either. I'm just saying that this is something that doesn't have easy answers in terms of solution. We just simply need to diagnose it first. We need to be patient in terms of solution. We need to gather our data. We need to strive to get ourselves out of this addiction, right? If you're hooked on pornography, of course, there are many voices explaining, well, what can you do? And if you fall, how to get back up, right? And why it's bad. But ultimately, it's still a work in progress because it's been sat on for so long and it has not been taken that very seriously. I just want to caution that another big problem with this sex issue is what we see with the fall of the Roman Empire and other civilizations. And it is the fact that men are denigrating themselves from warriors who can take on the world, who can stand on their own, who can die for a cause, into basically weaker men that just, are subservient because they don't feel like they can get through life without their fix. And it's very sad. It's a form of slavery. So men, it isn't just about doing it for, the fact that it's just not normal or the fact that it's virtual. It's about doing it for ourselves. It's about doing it for our own dignity, and that we are not slaves, that there's more to us than just being horn dogs or addicts, okay? That we can truly be examples to those around ourselves, and we can truly find greater happiness than just sex. I think that whole thing is a psyop, and it really has a lot to do with our culture. This sex thing is depressing when you really think about it. This is who I am. This is what life is all about, being a pleasure seeker, hedonist. I mean, the stuff is goofy now anyway. It's like a lot of people are realizing that what the pornography shows and what the softcore porn, let's say the magazines and the promiscuous women's clothing and all of that, it's just dumb. You feel like you're just entrapped like an animal. A lot of people, you would be surprised, despite all of what the feminists say, oh, men are so bad. A lot of them, when you listen to them, are starting to realize something much deeper. And that something is, well, in spite of the fact that I'm hooked, I feel not just depressed, but I feel existentially depressed. I do not like this idea that all we are just bodies who use each other and have functions, right? And they are very upset at what women are being depicted as, and women are going along with it. Right? The woman is just the pleasure object, right? And it's all about her looks. And they're also very upset about what's going on in their personal life, right? Why am I just a consumer? There's a consumer meme, if you know what that is, right? Why is a man just someone who is a good little boy for the state, is a good little boy for the whims of his girlfriend or wife, who is not a leader anymore, who's a good little boy for the corporation? He wears his mask. What a good little boy. And he doesn't really have any opinions because, after all, no one wants to hear what the man's opinion is. And they're seeing that something is wrong, that their power has been stolen. They're noticing that when they start pushing back against the addiction or against the pornography, when they push against the vice, they start feeling powerful. They start feeling like they can, kick ass and take names. They feel like they can do something. They can stand up to people, that they can speak their mind. Thus proving, I think, anecdotally, what I mentioned in the beginning, that sex is not just the sexual release. It is connected to our energy. It is part of the whole system. And now I can't speak much for the women, but I am hearing that women are noticing that too. Now, women get screwed up from porn in a different way. But can we please all just admit that it's time to move on? I think the era of pornography is on its way out, actually, because the awareness is there. People are trying to get out of it, and it's kind of running on fumes, to be honest with you. So let's make an effort. This is something that's at our fingertips that we can do something about. Through this revolution, we can not just reclaim our energy, reclaim our minds, reclaim our souls, reclaim our power as men, but we can reclaim the dignity of human beings, and we can, hope of all hopes, put a nail in the coffin of the lies of the sexual revolution that's been perpetrated throughout history. It's happened before. It isn't just the 60s. We can put to rest these liars and these lies that keep popping up, these excuses that it's all good. You know, sexual immorality is all good. You know, this is just some sort of freedom of expression, and it isn't killing love, romance, and beauty at all, and it definitely isn't aggressive, and people definitely won't shove it down your throats everywhere you see it. That was a lie, okay? This was very much a cancerous, aggressive disease, a true pandemic that has really done a lot of damage. And I will be really interested to see how the culture changes if men regain their confidence. So that's it for me. I hope you enjoyed the show. And there will be more videos about this topic, not done by me per se, but check in on the channel. We are tackling this through Lent. God bless, and hope to see you on the next episode.